What happens when a strong voice refuses to step back? Jasmine Crockett, known for her direct approach and commitment to speaking openly, finds herself in a tense exchange with Melania Trump, a moment that highlights contrast between public personas and personal viewpoints. In this exchange, Jasmine is not only speaking for her perspective but also addressing issues that are often left unspoken. For those who follow her work, it becomes a moment worth observing closely. It began as a calm evening on a live television program, but few could have anticipated how quickly the tone would shift. The studio was modern and professional, designed as a space where public figures could discuss important topics. That night's guests brought very different styles. Jasmine Crockett appeared focused and expressive, while Melania Trump maintained her well-known composed and reserved presence. The host, a seasoned journalist, guided the discussion carefully, aiming to keep things balanced and respectful. The topics centered on the future of the United States, its challenges and possible solutions. At first, the discussion felt relatable and measured. As the cameras rolled, Jasmine spoke with clarity and purpose. Her tone combined authority with a sense of approachability, touching on issues like inequality, healthcare reform, and voting rights. These complex subjects were presented in a way that felt grounded and easy to follow, almost like a thoughtful conversation rather than a formal debate. Her main point was straightforward. The country needed unity and a willingness to face its challenges directly. Melania, in contrast, spoke with calm precision. Her remarks emphasized family values, personal responsibility, and her support for broader national goals. She highlighted the importance of unity as well, though her focus leaned more toward stability and shared traditions. Initially, the exchange remained polite and structured. Both women shared their views while the host ensured equal time and smooth transitions. To viewers, it appeared to be a typical discussion, orderly, respectful, and controlled. However, as the conversation continued, a subtle tension began to surface. Jasmine's expression suggested disagreement, though she remained composed. Both participants stayed firm in their positions. Jasmine's tone carried quiet determination, while Melania maintained her measured delivery, showing confidence in her perspective. The host then introduced a recent poll indicating increasing division across the country and invited both guests to respond. Jasmine answered first, explaining that the divide was not only political but also emotional. She pointed out that trust among people had weakened, making cooperation more difficult. Without rebuilding that trust, she suggested, meaningful progress would be hard to achieve. Melania acknowledged the point but responded from a different angle. She emphasized the importance of remembering foundational values, particularly those connected to family and individual responsibility. Her tone suggested she was addressing a broader audience, reinforcing ideas she believed were essential to national strength. Then the discussion took an unexpected turn. Melania shifted her focus, and her tone became more direct. She questioned Jasmine's background in a way that changed the atmosphere in the room. The comment introduced a personal element that had not been present before. The studio grew noticeably quieter. Jasmine paused briefly, and the host looked between the two, recognizing the shift. What had been a composed discussion now carried a more intense and personal energy. Jasmine remained steady. A slight, controlled smile suggested she was prepared to respond thoughtfully. The conversation, once centered on national issues, had clearly moved into more sensitive territory. The audience leaned in, watching closely to see how she would handle the moment. As the remarks settled, the tension became more apparent. Jasmine, known for her quick thinking and composed demeanor, took a moment before responding. Her expression showed focus, and any initial surprise quickly faded. She asked for clarification in a calm but firm tone, signaling that she expected the statement to be explained. It was not just a question, it was an invitation for accountability. The host attempted to guide the conversation back to safer ground, but the shift had already taken place. Melania continued, repeating her point with a more direct tone, suggesting that identity and background should be clarified before discussing the country's future. Her words echoed through the studio, leaving a noticeable pause in the conversation. The exchange had clearly moved beyond a standard discussion, becoming a moment defined by contrast in perspective, communication style, and approach. Beneath the surface, there was a personal undertone. The implication was noticeable. Jasmine Crockett, with her confident opinions and direct style, was being positioned as someone who could not fully understand America's challenges in the same way as Melania Trump, who was born in Slovenia. For a brief moment, Jasmine processed the comment carefully. Then, like an experienced public figure, she allowed a short pause before responding. Well, I don't think you get to decide who speaks for America, Jasmine said, her tone calm but firm. I was born here in Texas and I understand what it means to work toward the future of this country. The audience, tense just seconds before, seemed to ease slightly. Her response was clear and steady. She was not going to be dismissed. The host, trying to regain control, cleared his throat and attempted to guide the discussion back to safer ground. However, Melania, determined to continue, added another point. She suggested that those who were not born in the country should be cautious when questioning its direction. Her words were controlled, but the message carried weight. The atmosphere in the studio grew heavier. The audience leaned forward, sensing that the discussion had shifted. What started as a policy-focused conversation now felt more personal. Jasmine remained composed, refusing to ignore the comment. The direction of the exchange had changed, and she chose to address it directly. You think coming from another country makes you the only authority on what defines an American? Jasmine asked, her voice steady with a hint of disbelief. America is built by people from many backgrounds. You cannot decide who has the right to speak based on birthplace. That is not how this country works. Her words extended beyond her own position. She was addressing a broader idea, that participation and voice should not be limited by origin. The audience remained attentive, recognizing the larger message behind her response. Melania, who had maintained a calm presence earlier, now appeared more tense. Her expression tightened slightly as the exchange became more direct. The host once again attempted to redirect the conversation, but the dynamic had clearly shifted. Jasmine remained firm, while Melania appeared focused on holding her ground. This moment was no longer just about identity. It had become a discussion about who has the right to speak, to question, and to define national values. The audience watched closely, uncertain how the exchange would develop. Would the discussion return to its original topic, or continue along this more personal path? What began as a calm conversation had now turned into a clear disagreement. Both women maintained eye contact, neither stepping back, each defending her perspective on what it means to represent the country. Jasmine acknowledged the weight of the earlier remark. It felt intentional, as if it were meant to challenge her position. But rather than reacting emotionally, she chose her words carefully. Leaning slightly forward, she spoke in a controlled and measured tone. If we are going to question backgrounds, she began, then perhaps we should focus on transparency and consistency across the board. The room grew quiet again. The host looked concerned, recognizing that the discussion was moving further away from its original focus. The audience listened closely, aware that the tone had shifted into more sensitive territory. The host then stepped in, asking Jasmine to clarify her point and encouraging both guests to keep the discussion respectful and focused. Jasmine remained composed, her voice calm but deliberate. I'm not making accusations, she said. I'm saying that public figures should be open and consistent. That is what builds trust. The tension in the room remained, though her wording softened the direction of the conversation. It was not just about individuals anymore, it was about expectations of honesty and accountability. Melania took a breath and responded firmly, emphasizing her position and dismissing any suggestion that her personal life was unclear. Her tone reflected a desire to re-establish control of the narrative. Jasmine listened without interruption, maintaining eye contact. When she responded, her tone remained even. This conversation is about more than any one person, she said. It is about fairness, clarity, and respect for everyone involved. The exchange highlighted a clear contrast in communication styles. Melania had long been known for her composed and carefully managed public image, while Jasmine approached the moment with directness and focus. As the discussion continued, the audience remained engaged. What had started as a policy discussion had evolved into a broader conversation about identity, representation, and accountability in public life. Jasmine Crockett now appeared to be pulling back the curtain, raising questions that are rarely addressed openly. She shifted the focus toward what happens behind the scenes and what may remain unspoken. As the moments passed, Melania Trump stayed quiet. Her discomfort became more noticeable as she adjusted slightly in her seat. The audience, fully engaged, waited to see how she would respond. Would she offer a stronger denial, address the point directly, or allow the silence to continue? The host, realizing the discussion had moved beyond its original scope, tried again to guide it back. Let's return to the main issues, he said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Even he seemed affected by the seriousness of the exchange. Jasmine, however, chose to continue. No, she said firmly. We're talking about honesty and accountability. Her tone remained controlled, but her message was clear. the atmosphere grew more intense. What began as a conversation about the country's future had shifted into a deeper discussion about public image and personal transparency. Melania's pause stood out. For the first time that evening, she did not respond immediately. That silence carried weight. For several seconds she looked ahead, appearing to gather her thoughts, but no clear answer followed. The audience, both in the studio and watching from home, noticed the change. Jasmine's remarks seemed to challenge the image Melania had maintained for years. Jasmine remained steady, her focus unchanged. She had raised a difficult point, and Melania's hesitation added to the tension. Finally, Melania spoke, her words coming quickly as she attempted to regain control. She firmly denied any suggestion of inconsistency, emphasizing her role as a mother and dismissing the claims as untrue. Her tone was strong, though there was a slight strain beneath it. Jasmine, experienced in public dialogue, recognized the shift. This was no longer a routine exchange. The tone had become more serious, and the discussion had moved into sensitive territory. "You're right," Jasmine said, her voice even. "But that's not the issue I'm raising." Her expression suggested she was pointing to a broader concern rather than a single detail. Melania's expression tightened slightly. Years of maintaining a composed public presence had not prepared her for this type of questioning. The discussion was no longer about a single topic. It was about perception, consistency, and how public figures present themselves over time. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting," Melania replied, her tone controlled but defensive. Jasmine responded calmly, asking for clarity and openness rather than avoidance. "This is about transparency," she said. "People expect honesty, especially from those in the public eye." The tension in the room remained strong. The audience leaned in, waiting to see how the exchange would unfold. Melania held her composure, though it appeared more effort was required to maintain it. "I'm not hiding anything," she said, more quietly but still firm. "What matters is my role and my responsibilities." Jasmine responded without hesitation. "It's about more than one role," she said. "It's about how information is presented and how trust is built." Her words carried a broader message. This was not only about one individual but about public accountability in general. The audience could feel the weight of the discussion as it continued. Melania had long been seen as composed and reserved, maintaining distance from controversy. But now, that carefully managed image was being examined more closely. Jasmine continued, her tone steady. "The past cannot simply be ignored," she said. "And it's difficult to move forward without addressing it honestly." Melania's expression shifted slightly, though she remained firm. She rejected the claims, stating that she had done nothing wrong and reaffirming her position. Jasmine shook her head slightly, emphasizing that the discussion was about broader concerns, not just personal roles. The exchange grew more focused. Jasmine suggested that avoiding difficult questions can lead to confusion and mistrust. Her words were measured but direct, highlighting the importance of clarity in public life. The host, sensing the conversation reaching a critical point, stepped in again. "Let's refocus," he said, his voice tense. "We're here to discuss the future." Jasmine responded with a thoughtful question. "How can we discuss the future," she asked, "if the past is still unresolved?" Melania's composure appeared more strained. The discussion was no longer about a single topic. It had become about perception, responsibility, and how long a public image can be maintained under scrutiny. Jasmine's comments pointed toward a deeper issue, suggesting that transparency plays a key role in trust. The studio fell quiet. The conversation had clearly moved from policy to a broader examination of public life. Melania, who had long projected calm and control, now seemed more guarded. She responded by dismissing the claims and reaffirming her stance, but Jasmine continued to press for clarity. The host attempted once more to guide the discussion back. "Let's stay on track," he said, his tone cautious. "We're here to talk about national issues." Jasmine remained steady. She pointed out that trust and honesty are part of those very issues. The audience listened closely. What had started as a general discussion had become a closer look at how public figures are perceived and how narratives are shaped. Jasmine emphasized that openness is essential and that avoiding difficult topics does not resolve them. Melania remained seated, maintaining her position despite the pressure. For a moment, it seemed as though she might step away from the conversation, but she stayed, composed yet clearly affected. Jasmine continued, her tone firm but controlled. She spoke about the importance of truth and the need for accountability in public life. The host made one final attempt to redirect, suggesting a return to broader national topics. But Jasmine concluded her point by reinforcing a central idea, that understanding the truth is essential to moving forward. The room fell quiet once again. The audience recognized that the discussion had evolved into something more significant. A reflection on transparency, responsibility, and the expectations placed on those in the public eye. What began as a conversation about the nation's future had become a deeper exchange about trust and public perception. The tension remained, and while no final resolution was reached, the impact of the moment was clear to everyone watching.